signs of the end times, what we are seeing is a coming together of not one event, but a multiple of events are overlapping together. And therefore, when you see all of the ducks lining up, it is very important for us to understand that these things are upon us. We have seen the rebirth of Israel, we have seen moral breakdown, we have seen the rise of world empires, we have seen the radical increase in knowledge, we have seen the widespread of the gospel globally. More than ever, I think we can all identify with rapid increase in technology. As I said, you know, the goal was to have technology with you, and then it's going to be on you. And now the next move they want to make sure is technology is now in you. We have seen signs in the heavens such as blood moons, increase in wars, earthquakes, pestilence, rise of Russia, and the alignment of nations. And I can go on and
Good day, everyone. Both can be viewed as the coming of the New World Order. We will explore the UN, its history, role, and current influence on how they are positioning themselves as a New World ruler. United Nations, the possible New World Order. What is the UN? The UN, United Nations, is an international governmental organization currently made up of leaders representing from 193 countries worldwide. Now you may ask, what is an international government organization? United Nations is an international governmental organization, IGO, which is a nation-state level organization created by treaty or convention, and not to be confused with the International Non-Governmental Organization, NGO, for example, the World Economic Forum. As being an IGO that are formed by treaties, they have the advantage than mere grouping or forums of nations because they are subject to international law with the ability to enter into enforceable agreements among themselves or with other states. The history of forums on international dispute. So here's a little bit of a history. The League of Nations, an international organization headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, created after the First World War, to provide a forum for resolving international disputes. The first of its kind existed between 1919 to 1946. So as we continue to look on the history of forums on international dispute, as World War II was about to end in 1945, nations were in ruins and the world wanted peace. Representatives of 50 countries gathered at the United Nations Conference on International Organization in San Francisco, California from the 25th of April to the 26th of June, 1945. So a little bit more on the other forums on international dispute over the years. The Intergovernmental Organization, the IGO, covers multiple issues and involve governments from every region of the world as being the oldest IGO, which is the UN. And the UN also replaced other forums or organizations that will basically be considered on covering multiple issues. So other forums the UN replaced was the League of Nations, the Universal Postal Union, and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So they sort of replaced them as the oldest international organization, governmental organization. So that is basically what they are speaking of here. So now we're going to go into a little history of the United Nations. The birth of the UN. The United Nations, or the UN, was the second multi-purpose international organization established in the 20th century that was worldwide in scope and membership. Its predecessor, the League of Nations, was created by the Treaty of Versailles in 1919 and disbanded in 1946. Why was the UN formed? For 2 months, government leaders proceeded to draft and then sign the UN Charter, which created a new international organization, the United Nations, which it was hoped would prevent another world war like the one they had just lived through in 1945. The purpose, principle, and organization of the United Nations. So we're going to be delving into a little bit of their purpose, principle, and organization structure. United Nations, its purpose. The United Nations is an international organization whose primary purpose is to promote and maintain international peace and security, which is very important to them. And also to achieve its goals, the UN relies on several structures and principles, including member states, international law, and collective security. Now we're going to look into the principle of the United Nations. The United Nations is guided by the following principles: respect for the sovereignty and integrity of member states, non-interference in the internal affairs of member states, equal rights and self-determination of peoples, also, as we continue, friendly relations among nations and cooperation in solving international problems, to uphold the rule of law, human rights, and human equality. Now we're going to look into a little bit more of the organization arm of the United Nations. So we have something called a United Nations Charter arm. The United Nations Charter contains basic principles all members are to uphold. In return, they provide forum to peacefully resolve all international issues. There are three major arms of this chapter. They consist of the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council. So the first arm of this organ, we consider to call it an organ because it's part of their organization, is called the General Assembly. The General Assembly, the only body where all UN members are represented. They are to promote social progress and protect human rights, to discuss issues and make recommendations. Also, their other function is to select new members of the Economic and Social Council. So this first arm, as we will continue again, because we are still in the General Assembly, that's the first part or organ, principal organ of the United Nations. They are also in charge of supervising the activities of other UN organizations, participating in the election of judges for the International Court of Justice and Secretary General. They are also the general overseer within the scope of the UN Charter Committee. The second arm of the United Nations principal organ is called the Security Council. The UN Charter assigns to the Security Council the primary responsibility for maintenance of international peace and security. The Council consists of 11 members, 5 permanent and 6 non-permanent members, elected by the General Assembly every 2 years. In 1965, an amendment was made increasing the council members to 15. So now they have 5 permanent and 10 non-permanent members. As we will see following, the council is composed of 50 members. Now the 5 permanent members, as we continue to look at the Security Council, part of the United Nations principal organ, 5 permanent members: China, France, Russian Federation, the United Kingdom, and the United States. 10 non-permanent members elected for every 2 years, 2-year terms by the General Assembly. We have Algeria, Ecuador, Guyana, Japan, Malta, Mozambique, Republic of Korea, Sierra Leone, Slovenia, Switzerland. The United Nations principal organ, third arm, the Economic and Social Council. The purpose for this council is to coordinate the work of over 30 specialized agencies, programs, and funds to promote economic and social development worldwide. It's designed also to be the UN's main venue for the discussion of international economic and social issues. The Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, directs and coordinates the economic, social, humanitarian, and cultural activities of the UN and its specialized agencies. ECOSOC conducts studies, formulates resolutions, recommendations, and conventions for consideration by the General Assembly, and coordinates the activities of various UN programs and specialized agencies. Here we have the organizational chart of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, which includes governing and intergovernmental bodies. Now, what also part and in part of the UN organization, there's also subsidiary organs that is also connected to the UN. For example, the International Court of Justice, the United Nations Secretariat, the United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, also the United Nations Children's Fund. As we continue this list of subsidiary organs, we also will see the United Nations Development Programme, the United Nations Environment Programme, the United Nations Refugee Agency, the World Food Programme. Now also what is also part of their network or organization is what we call the UN Independent Specialized Agencies. The UN also has specialized agencies affiliated to them but works independently. For example, the World Labour Organization, the World Bank Group, the International Monetary Fund, UNESCO. Now you may ask, how are these members of United Nations are chosen? So we have something called Members of United Nations Admission. New members are admitted to the UN on the recommendation of the Security Council and by a two-third vote of the General Assembly. Now not only do they deal with international issues, they also have goals that they have put in place, a list of goals they have put in place looking at towards 2030. So their 2030 mission goals. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is a resolution adopted by the UN General Assembly in 2015, focusing to achieve 17 goals within 15 years. 1. End all poverty everywhere. 2. End hunger, achieve food security, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. 3. Ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. 4. To ensure exclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. 5. To achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. 6. To ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. 7. To ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Right, as we continue, number 8, to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Number 9, to build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. 10, to reduce inequality within and among countries. 11, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. 12, to ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. 13, to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact, acknowledging the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. 14, to conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. Also, number 15, to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainable manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. Also, to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Number 17, to strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. Now we may now we may go a different direction now a little bit. What is the New World Order and how does it play in all of this? The New World Order, NWO, is a conspiracy theory in which adherents believe that a cabal of powerful elites is secretly implementing a dystopian international governance structure that will grant them complete control over the global populace. Now we're going to look at the agenda, the New World Order agenda, and what entails that they are looking towards. Right? So the New World Order is listed as one world currency, one world military, one world family unit, 5G, one owned private transport, one world owned air travel, one world owned synthetic drugs. Is the UN connected to the New World Order? Question: is the United Nations planning to institute a New World Order by 2030? There is no evidence that the UN will establish one world government in their own words, along with associated implications such as a single military and currency. Now we're going to look at, is there any Bible prophecies about the one world order? A one world or global government is predicted in Daniel and Revelation. It will come after the rise of a confederation of 10 nations or regions. The New World Order comes when the Antichrist appears, Revelation 13:1, Daniel 7:16-24, and Daniel 2:41-42. Now we're going to see if there's a Bible connection between the UN and the New World Order. One member of the Confederation, as we have said before, will displace 3 of the other members, subdue the others, and rule overall, led by the satanically empowered Antichrist. It is this confederation of 10 nations that is most often connected with the United Nations. Is the UN heading towards being called a New World Order? It was stated in an article the UN is not becoming the New World Order. However, we can't ignore signs saying otherwise. Now, also the UN has an army that is used for peacekeeping. So the Security Council is basically what is connected, part and in part of this UN army. The Security Council, the UN army, current influences. Under chapter of the UN Charter, the Security Council can take enforcement measures to maintain or restore international peace and security. Now, a few years back, there was an article written by Boutros Ghali in the Washington Post, December the 5th, on discussions or talks of to introduce an army, a one world army actually, or a new world army, which was also connected to the UN army. So there was also talks concerning that discussion in the Washington Post on December the 5th, 1992. UN signs of new world order current influences as we continue again. These measures can range from economic sanctions to international military actions. The Council also establishes UN peacekeeping operations and special political missions. Over 20 goals comprise the New World Order. The United Nations will focus on as part of its Agenda 21 in the year 2030 mission goals. According to the claim, items hidden in the agenda under different names may include one world government, or the direction to being a one world government, a single cashless currency, which as a lot of the countries now are cashless, and also government owned and controlled schools, colleges and universities, and an end to its single family home. As we mentioned before, are these the signs of the UN possibly becoming the New World Order in the future? Religious groups also connected the UN as being part of the New World Order from inception, using Revelation 17 to 18. So even though the UN being as the New World Order, fact or fiction, the UN refutes the accusation. However, evidence has begun to unravel over the years. Now here's a picture of the four beasts that will be physically be seen in the book of Revelation. Now strange enough, the first one, the first beast, there is a statue, right? One sign of possibly becoming the New World Order. The statue was installed in 2021 outside the UN building, which is also described in the books of Daniel chapter 7 verse 4 and Revelation chapter 13 verse 2. So now we're going to do a little bit of connecting the dots. Connection of the tribulation and the Antichrist. The Apostle John sees the beast, who we identify as the Antichrist, rising out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Revelation 13:1. What is the connection between the Antichrist and the New World Order? So one of the things the Antichrist will be having when he appears, having great authority and power given to him by Satan in Revelation 13:2. He receives worship all the world. Revelation 13:3 to 4, and he will have authority over every tribe, the world, language, and nations, leaders over all governments, and leader of the one world government. So at this point, or at that point, nations, would be basically searching for solutions with all of these tribulations and with all of this chaos that will be taking place in in the land at that time. Nations will is willing to give up some of their sovereignty to combat climate change. It's easy to imagine the disaster and plagues described in Revelation 6:11 would create such a monumental crisis that the nations of the world would embrace anything and anyone who promises a solution. So here's a little bit of snippet of the timeline leading up to the Antichrist, right? The United Nations organization is a complex network of operation and the oldest, most influential IGU. They have access to resources other international organizations do not have. It is not certain with the entrance of the Antichrist if the organization will still exist or carrying a different name, but with also showing a lot of evidence that is connected to biblical theories, not biblical theories, but biblical scriptures, especially with the statute that is already in place outside the UN and knowing fully well the influence that the UN have on a worldwide scale. The UN is becoming the new world order. Bible evidence is pointing this organization to that direction. However, only time will tell. So thank you for going through a little bit of the history of the UN and how powerful this organization network is. And judging from how powerful they are or how influential they are, we don't know if they will be used when that time comes or if the organization will be under a different name or rebranding of a different name. But looking at how powerful that they are and the influence that they have on this world, we, as I was saying, only time will tell if they will be called the New World Order. So thank you for being with me today.